Hi friends, this is Mr. Derek here in Three Sisters with Krista, who is doing a guest story time, Cinderella. This is a book, it's kind of geared for ages 3 and 8, but everybody's welcome to watch. And I'm just going to ask Krista some questions about what it's like to own a store here. So you're a small business owner, and this is called a consignment shop. Can you tell us what a consignment shop is?
Yes. Consignment is where people actually bring their merchandise and inventory into us. We actually price it, and then whatever it sells for, the customer makes 50% and the store makes 50%. So it's a great way to get rid of those gently used items or maybe new items that you've never wore, and make a little bit of money at the same time.
As a small business owner, what is something that you really feel like you bring to the community? What do small business owners bring to the community?
Small business owners bring to the community a sense of togetherness. Small business owners like myself are able to do projects with the library in partnership with different things and people to promote reading in this instance, or sometimes it might be to promote a fundraiser. Small businesses are truly the heart of Rolla downtown community and Phillips County and the surrounding areas.
Very cool. You mentioned that you are a mom, right?
Correct. I am a mom of an 11-year-old son.
Very good. What's the importance of reading?
Reading is so important because it's going to help you in your everyday life. Personal testimony and story, I have been reading to my son since he was in my womb. So that is how important reading is to me. Reading is going to help your children in their everyday life, in school, and in their future as they grow and develop. So I encourage parents, grandparents, and any little children out there, as I'm playing Cinderella today, to pick up a book and read. Even if it's just a parent or grandparent reading to their children, or that child reading to them. Stop, take a minute, and always family first. Hi, Krista, live here, encouraging children to read at your local library, including the Rolla Library. They have a great, amazing books like the one that I featured today. Cinderella is here today to read to you. We are going to get started with Cinderella by James Marshall. Retold by Barbara Carland. Once there was a widower with a kind and beautiful daughter. Life was sweet in their simple cottage until the widower decided to remarry. Not knowing the ways of the world, he married a vain and horrid woman whose daughters were as vain and horrid as she. "What a stupid little house," they said. The widower's daughter was made to work like a servant in her own house. She was soon run ragged, washing, ironing, scrubbing, dusting, and cooking heaps of food. The poor girl no longer had a bed of her own and had to sleep among the ashes and the cinders. And from that time on, they called her Cinderella. Now, it happened that the king of the land had a handsome son. The king's greatest desire was to see his son married. He decided to give a ball and invite all the fair maidens of the realm. When the king's messenger delivered the royal invitation, the dreadful stepsisters were overjoyed. Each was convinced that she would win the prince's favor. On that day, the ball, Cinderella was exhausted from trying to make her stepsisters look beautiful. "Wouldn't you like to go to the ball?" they said, teasing her cruelly. "Oh yes," said Cinderella. "Don't be ridiculous," cried the stepsisters. "What would a wretched mouse like you do at a fancy ball?" And they shrieked with laughter. Thinking themselves beyond beautiful words, the stepsisters left for the ball. "Don't be lazy bones while we're away," they said to Cinderella. "And think about all the fun we will be having." After her stepsisters had gone, Cinderella went about her chores. As she worked, she wept bitterly. "You look so miserable, child," said a kind voice. "Who are you?" said Cinderella. I replied, "The plump little woman. Am your fairy godmother. Please tell me why you are crying." "I want so much to go to the ball," said Cinderella. "That should not be too difficult to arrange," said the fairy godmother. "But you must do as I say. First, fetch me a nice, big, round pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella brought the biggest pumpkin she could find. "Now," said the fairy godmother, "I will require 6 white mice and a fine, fat rat." Cinderella brought them live from the trap. "And finally," said the fairy godmother, "I must have 2 lizards. You might look behind the watering pail." Cinderella did as she was told. With a touch of her wand, the fairy godmother changed the pumpkin into a magical, beautiful golden coach, the mice into 6 white horses, the rat into a jolly coachman, the lizards into 2 sleek footmen. "Lovely!" the fairy godmother exclaimed. "Off you go!" "Am I to go in rags?" said Cinderella. "Silly me," said the fairy godmother as she transformed Cinderella's filthy rags into an elegant gown from her head to her feet. Placed a pair of sparkly glass slippers. "Now you are ready," said the fairy godmother, "but remember this, you must return home before the stroke of midnight. For then all your finery will change back into what was." Cinderella promised to obey, and then she was off to the ball. At the palace, the prince learned that an enchanted maiden had arrived, and he had greeted her with himself. The other guests were puzzled. Who was this beautiful stranger? Completely smitten, the prince had eyes only for Cinderella. They danced every dance. Cinderella found herself deeply in love. She was so happy that she took notice of the hour. Suddenly, the clock began to strike 12. Remembering the warning, Cinderella ran from the prince's arms, out of the ballroom, and down the steps of the palace. In her haste, she lost one of her glass slippers. "Wait, wait," cried the prince. "I don't know your name." Cinderella's golden coach sped away from the palace, but at the stroke of 12, the fairy godmother's warning came true. The coach was changed back into a pumpkin, the horses back into mice, the coachman back into a rat, the footmen back into lizards. Cinderella was once again dressed in rags. Discovering the tiny glass slipper, the prince vowed to find and marry the beautiful stranger. He traveled the kingdom far and wide, trying the glass slipper on every maiden's foot, but it fit no one. Finally, he arrived at Cinderella's house. "Me first," cried the elder stepsister, extending her long, skinny foot, but could manage to only get her toes into the slipper. "My turn," cried the young stepsister, thrusting her pudgy foot at the prince. She pushed and she shoved and she grunted and she groaned, but the slipper would not fit. "May I try it on?" said Cinderella, stepping out of the shadows. The glass slipper fit perfectly on Cinderella's tiny foot. "I have found my princess," cried the prince. "We shall wed tomorrow on the festive day." The kingdom rejoiced, generous and forgiving. Cinderella moved her family into the palace and found a lord of the court for each of her stepsisters to marry. Cinderella's fairy godmother moved in too, just to make sure that everyone lived happily ever after. Remember to read locally and love your community even harder. Brought to you by Three Sisters Resale Consignment, the book of Cinderella in the Rolla Public Library.